Welcome back, my friends. We're now back to the true story of the Saints of Snowville, Chapter 6. Let's get started. At 11:30 a.m., Bishop John Jackson took his place at the pulpit and cleared his throat audibly in order to gain the attention of the members of the assembled priesthood. Almost every male member of the ward between 12 and 84 was present. Something was going to happen, everyone could tell. It was rumored that Sam Olson had repented of his inequity, but was also going to ask for forgiveness of the body of the priesthood. Elder A.J. Spencer was present for the first time in 20 years. The last time he was in church was the Sunday before he asked the bishop for a recommend to be married in the Logan Temple. Miles Rasmussen was present for the first time in 15 years. He had been disfellowshipped from the church about 15 years before when he started a general merchandise store in competition with the church-owned branch of ZCMI. Miles was broke in 6 months. After he closed shop, he was restored to full fellowship in the church, but had not come back until now. Bishop Jackson assumed the most solemn demeanor as he took up the business at hand. "Brethren," he said, "we have a matter of business to bring before the body of the priesthood. Brother Olson has asked that he be heard at this time on the matter of grave importance." George Perry, a 12-year-old deacon, ordained the week before, punched Noel Schaefer in the ribs and said, "Why is everyone here?" "Dad told Ma and Sam Olson is going to confess his sins," Noel replied. "Has Sam been smoking or something?" "Shut up and listen," said Noel, sliding to the other side of the bench. As Sam Olson slowly walked up to the pulpit, A.V. Merrill leaned forward and cupped his hand to his ear. A.V. had been excommunicated from the church in 1898. At that time he was a member of the stake presidency, and in the capacity had written himself a temple recommend and taken a busty girl 36 years his junior as a third wife. This was 8 years after the manifesto, and the brethren in Salt Lake took a dim view on this practice and cut President Merrill off from the church. He had never repented, but came to church occasionally and loved to learn of sins committed by his brethren. Former brother Merrill had been too feeble to work for many years. He sometimes didn't know whether he was in church or attending the University of Utah, but the old bastard sure as hell knows his way around the bed, this brother Joe remarked when A.V.'s third wife delivered her 6th child. That made a total of 23 children fathered by A.V. A.V. was in his 76th year at the time, and when he died at age 90, he could point at pride to the fact that he had serviced from 1 to 3 women for 65 years. Sam began his public confession slowly in a low voice, but picked up momentum as he progressed. He had spent more than a year preparing this speech, and had had help from cousin E.M. Miller, who was a school teacher. Sam intended that speech reveal no more than necessary. "Brethren," Sam intoned, "I appear before you according to the practices and procedures of the church, with a broken heart and contrite spirit. I have transgressed the law and broken the everlasting covenant. While in the vice of Eros," Sam continued, "I was set upon by Lucifer, son of the morning, he who was cast out of heaven with a third of the host thereof. I succumbed to the weakness of the flesh, even as King David, he who slew Goliath and saved Israel from the Philistines, and stand before you today guilty of a sin second only to the shedding of innocent blood. I wish to bear witness that I alone am culpable. I wish to absolve the object of my indiscretion from any censure. I surreptitiously, clandestinely, and nocturnally took advantage of a handmaiden of God in a moment of weakness, and debauched her." Sam concluded, "Brethren, I ask your forgiveness. I pray that I may be restored to my former good standing, and again sit with my brethren in the councils of this ward in full faith and fellowship." The deacons understood not a word Sam said. For all they knew, he was lecturing them on the evils of coffee, drinking, or bearing his testimony. Most of the others in attendance didn't understand either exactly what Brother Olson said, but knew what he was supposed to be saying and assumed that he had said it. His tale stripped of its verbiage, Sam told the priesthood assembled that he had looked upon Ida Wilkinson, lusted after the things of the flesh, and subsequently bred his unwed maiden. In the summer of 1929, Brother Olson was a 36-year-old widower. Ida Wilkinson was 19 years old, the girlfriend of Sam's 22-year-old brother, Jack, and the most seductive-looking girl in the ward. Sam had committed adultery in his heart with Ida and lusted after her body, even before his wife died of appendicitis in the spring of 1929. This lust did not reach fruition, however, until the night of the July 24th celebration. Jack took Ida to the dance on the evening of the 24th. He broke the word of wisdom by getting drunk, had a fight at about 11 p.m., passed out. Sam loaded Jack into the buggy, and he and Ida deposited him in the bunkhouse at the Olson Ranch. At about 1 a.m., Sam and Ida left the Olson Ranch for the Wilkinson homestead. Someplace along the 2-mile drive, Sam stopped the buggy, led Ida behind a willow bush, set aside his priesthood, laid her on the grass, and then and there, occupied her. Sam confessed his lust for long standing, and Ida found Sam to be a real man. Their passion was not consumed in one night, but was only accentuated. Before another year, Ida was knocked up, and Jack had beaten Sam up after learning the events of the 24th. Sam and Ida were married by a justice of the peace in Randolph. 3 weeks before, the fruit of their illicit romance was born. Ida proceeded to bear Sam 10 other children, and her dimensions of the girth and hips increased each year. Sam was heard to say, "Marriage sure as hell cools off a romance." After Sam's confession before the body of the priesthood, he was extended the hand of fellowship and again permitted to exercise his prerogatives as an elder in the church. "When these damned women get in heat," Bishop Jackson said to his second counselor, Ezra Hunter, "hot bloods like Sam are just the same as a stud horse. They will kick down the barn door, swim a river, jump a fence, or do anything to get at these hot females." "Illicit romance," the bishop continued, "is a hell of a problem for every bishop. Hot blood plagues all the young men and some of the old bastards." The bishop thought that the average man could be described as a male animal who roams the earth on his hind legs, seeking to impregnate women. When Herman Wilkinson learned of the impregnation of his daughter, he started after Sam with a shotgun. This seemed to him to be the way an outraged father should react. Cool heads easily persuaded him to spare Sam. He next demanded that Sam be tried before the bishop's court and excommunicated. Bishop Jackson had learned by experience that it was better to move slowly in this area. By virtue of his office as a bishop in the Mormon Church, he was a common judge in Israel and could exercise considerable judgment in handling members of the church. He would rather err on the side of leniency than be too harsh. He was aware of mortal man's inclination to abuse and misuse authority. In his own handwriting he had fashioned a constant reminder, which was kept inside his roll-up desk. "We have learned by sad experience that it is the nature of the disposition of almost all men. As soon as they get a little authority, as they suppose, they will immediately begin to exercise unrighteous dominion. In the seduction of and impregnation of Miss Wilkinson, there were certain factors in mitigation, as well as extenuation, that the bishop well appreciated. The bishop had always liked Sam, but before Sam had set aside his priesthood, he had done more than his share to help the bishop administer the temporal needs of the ward. Sam was foremost in bringing in wood to the church, working at the tithing granary, taking food to the widows, and keeping order in church. Ida Wilkinson didn't look virtuous, and there was considerable speculation about her status. The bishop was well aware that most of the younger men in the ward lusted after her, and that she was considered to be a looker. Why, he himself was all too painfully aware that Ida appeared to have all the appurtenance necessary for a woman to accomplish her prime purpose in life. He could understand Brother Olson's affinity with good-looking women. Hot blood had plagued the bishop since he was 15. He would be less than honest if he claimed that he had never lusted after a woman. There is a fine line distinction between lust and committing adultery in your heart. The bishop kept reassuring himself. "I have been near that line many times," he told his counselors, but I pray to God that I am not tempted to a point where I cross it. At 39 he felt safer than he had at 25. The bishop had observed that old age, poverty, or poor health eventually made Christians out of most men. In the 3 years that he had elapsed since Sam set aside his priesthood, Herman Wilkinson had learned to tolerate him. He was proud of his grandchildren. The marriage was working out, and Sam was a hell of a good provider. Herman had said Sam had confessed privately to the bishop what everyone knew. He seemed sorry, and he avowed that it would never happen again. The bishop was inclined to determine Sam's repentance sufficient at that point, but his counselors and the stake president thought a public confession was the minimum sanction. Hence Sam had appeared before the body of the priesthood and had confessed at 11:40 a.m., August 24th, 1932. The wise bishop closed the book on the case and the errant widower.